Fifth grade friends. Happy Thursday. Welcome to your math lesson with Mrs. Smith. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you are all set for success in a good place where you're ready to learn. You'll also need a few things today. I'd like you to get your math binder. We're going to be using some anchor charts, your student book, and your home connections book with something to write with. You can go ahead and pause the video and go get those things now. Welcome back. As you unpause the video, go ahead and take a second and take in the scenery. I thought we'd start our math class on the beach today. Take a deep breath, relax, enjoy. We're going to be switching gears today. Yesterday you took the checkpoint, the first checkpoint in Unit 6. And today we're going to move to another aspect of geometry, which is sorting and classifying shapes. We're going to start today with some vocabulary, and our first vocabulary word is hierarchy. We're going to come back to this word later on in the lesson, but I just want to give it a second to sink in. The hierarchy is a way of classifying objects that starts with the most general term for the whole entire set and then works towards more specific types of objects in the set. Okay, next piece of vocabulary that you will be talking about is our angles. You guys have talked about these before. You guys have learned about these before. So let's go through them one more time. What is an acute angle? An acute angle up here is an angle that measures greater than 0 degrees but less than 90 degrees. An obtuse angle is an angle that measures more than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees. And a right angle is an angle that measures exactly 90 degrees. So I know that's a review, but I just want to make sure that we kind of refresh ourselves on what we are going to be talking about and thinking about today. Now that we've gone over the terms, let's start talking specifically about triangles. Like I said, we are going to make a few different triangles today. So I want you to turn to your student book, page 223. As you do that, you will see, as you turn your student book to page 223, it should look like this. It should look like you have 4 Geo boards on your page, and those Geo boards, the top of the page says Triangles Record Sheet. I'm going to start by making a triangle on a Geo board. This is a fun little app that we like to use. It's an actual virtual Geo board. Your teachers should have a link that you can also use this if you'd like to today. I'm going to take my rubber band. I'm going to put it on my Geo board. I'm just going to move it around, make a triangle. It looks like a fun triangle. As I've made this triangle, I want you to copy this onto that first Geo board on your student book on page 223. I'm going to do that along with you. I have 223 here. And I'm going to take my mark and I'm going to start to draw my line. I'm going to draw it down. Good. Doesn't have to be perfect. That's my first triangle for right now. As you go, or right now, what I'd like you to do is draw 3 more triangles on your student book, on those open 3 Geo boards. It can be any sort of triangle that looks good to you. Just make sure it has 3 sides and that it is a closed triangle. You can go ahead and pause the video here and do that now. Great job. As you can see, as you were paused, I also paused and made my triangles on my Geo board. Now that we have our triangles drawn, we're going to take a look at what we have. We're going to look at this golden piece of paper. This golden, you should have brought it home with you on the last Friday of school. It also looks like this, and we are going to think about different types of triangles and how we classify them. So the first way we can classify triangles is by the size of their angles. So I'm just going to read along here. And if we look at this first triangle here, it is an acute triangle. We call it an acute triangle because all 3 angles are acute. This angle here is acute, smaller than 90. All 3 of these angles are smaller than 90 degrees. Our next triangle is a right triangle. This is a right triangle because one of the angles is a right angle. And right here we can see this is a right angle. The last one we have is an obtuse triangle. It's an obtuse triangle because one of the angles is larger than 90 degrees. This one right here is bigger than 90 degrees, so it's an obtuse triangle. Let's take a look at the triangle that we made together. And just on this very first one here, let's take a look at the triangle and see which kind it is. Do we have acute angles? Well, there's an acute angle here. This is also an acute angle here. This one, oh, that's a right angle. So I'm just going to use my pencil, and right underneath the Geo Board, I'm going to write acute triangle. Good. Did you write that underneath yours as well? Go ahead and write that underneath your first triangle, and then you can pause the video here and go through your next 3 geoboards, triangles on your geoboards, and write what kind of triangle you have. Is it an acute triangle? Is it a right triangle? Or is it an obtuse triangle? Pause here and check it out. Okay, welcome back. You did yours, now we're gonna do ours together. We're gonna take a look at the second triangle here, and I see an acute angle here. I see another acute angle, but this one here is a larger than 90 degrees. That means that is an obtuse triangle. Let's take a look at the other 2 triangles that I made. Let's see, third one here, well, that's an acute angle. That's an acute angle. All 3 of these angles are smaller than 90, so this is an acute triangle. And as I'm writing this, you guys can be looking at the next one and tell me, how many of these angles, or what kind of angles do you see? Are they acute? Are they right? Are they obtuse? So you checked it out, and you notice that they are also all acute angles. So this is an acute triangle. Great job. If you haven't already filled in all of yours, make sure that yours are all labeled with either acute, right, or obtuse triangle. You might have thought that we were done. We're not. We have another way to classify these triangles. We're going to jump back to our types of triangles. And as we do that, we're going to go to the bottom half of that golden sheet. And it says we can also identify or classify triangles by the lengths of their sides. So if we look at the first triangle here, this is an isosceles triangle, which means 2 sides are the same length. Can you see which 2 sides they are? This one and this one here are both the same length. So that's an isosceles triangle. The next triangle that we look at is a scalene triangle. Scalene is a triangle that each side is a different length. So we look at this side here, it's pretty short. Next one is a little bit longer, and the third one is even longer still. So all 3 side lengths are different. The last kind of triangle that we have is an equilateral triangle. An equilateral triangle, each side is exactly the same length. Okay? You know what we're going to do now? We're going to go to our student book page, and we're going to take a look at what kind of side lengths do these triangles have. I'm going to change up my color just so that we are looking at side lengths are going to be in blue. Make sure I've got my pencil working here. Taking a look at our first triangle that we all did together. This side length is pretty long, but this side length is even longer. And then we got a teeny tiny one there. Look back at our paper. What does it mean to have 3, or which triangle has 3 different side lengths? That would be our scalene triangle. So we're going to write scalene right underneath here. You guys can write it as well underneath your first triangle. We're going to finish doing the ones that I have up on my screen, and then you're going to have the opportunity to complete the rest of your student book page. So as we take a look at our second triangle, we see one long side here, but then we see that this side and the other one are the same length. As we look back to our vocabulary, a triangle with two sides the same length is an isosceles triangle. So we're going to write that down. Make sure I spell it correctly. Isosceles triangle. All right, on to our next two. The next one, we had first side length. Now these look kind of similar, but I can see that this side comes here and the other side goes all the way over there. So I know that that's a longer length, and this one aren't the same. So that means they're all different lengths, which is our scalene triangle. And for our fourth triangle on our geo boards today, we take a look and all three of those sides are pretty darn close. That's our equilateral triangle. Okay, boys and girls, now is your chance to practice. You're going to pause the video and write down, classify your triangles that you made on the lengths of their sides. Are all three sides different? That would make it a scalene triangle. Are two of the side lengths the same? That would be an isosceles triangle. Or are all three sides the same length, which would make it an equilateral triangle? And you're going to write that just right below where we wrote our first classification. You can pause the video here. Okay, welcome back. We have one more thing to do, and that is take all of the stuff that we learned today about classifying our triangles and put it into our hierarchy of our triangles. So we're going to go back to our smart book here, and we're just going to review that definition, that a hierarchy is a way of classifying objects that starts with the most general term for the whole entire set of those objects, and then we work down to towards the more specific types of objects within the set. This is what our hierarchy is going to look like today. So we are doing a hierarchy on polygons. If we look at all polygons, the first thing that we can break this down into, let me get it back in the center here. The first way we can break out these polygons is by the number of sides. A triangle has 3 sides, quadrilaterals have 4 sides, pentagons have 5 sides, and hexagons have 6 sides. Now I told you today we're just talking about triangles. So one of the ways that we can classify those triangles was the side length. Remember all those 3 terms, we had triangles that were equilateral, which means all 3 sides were the same exact length. Isosceles, 2 sides were the same length. And scalene, all sides are different lengths. As we look at our hierarchy, remember we had another way to classify those triangles. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do. We're going to add a little bit more to our hierarchy. And just like the definition, we start with the most general term, which is polygons. Then we look at the number of sides of polygons. So triangles, quadrilaterals, pentagons, hexagons. Then just looking at those triangles, we looked at those side lengths. Remember that other thing that we classified our triangles with? That's right, it was the size of the angles. I'm going to start over here with those scalene triangles. As we look at our scalene triangles, we can break those into the different angle sizes. So we have a right triangle, acute triangle, and obtuse triangle. But as we look at those different triangles, what do you notice about all 3 of these? Take a second and look. I hope you notice that they're all different side lengths. So these 3 triangles have different side lengths, but this one has a right angle, this one has all acute angles, and this one has an obtuse angle. Now, if we move over to those isosceles triangles, let's scroll down a little bit here. If we look at our isosceles triangles, you will notice that, again, we have a right triangle, an acute triangle, and an obtuse triangle. But what do they all have in common, boys and girls? That's right. They all have two side lengths that are the same. That's what makes them isosceles. So this is a right angle, and this is a right isosceles triangle. All of these are acute angles, but the two side lengths are the same. So it's an acute isosceles triangle. Then our last one has an obtuse angle, so it's an obtuse isosceles triangle. You guys notice anything missing from our hierarchy? I don't know about you, but I'm noticing that the equilateral triangle doesn't have anything underneath it. Why do you think that might be, boys and girls? Think about that for a second. Think about what an equilateral triangle looks like. If I try my best to draw an equilateral triangle, equilateral, remember, means that all three side lengths are exactly the same. In order for all three side lengths to be exactly the same, that means that we can't have a right angle in this triangle, and we can't have any obtuse angles. So all equilateral triangles are acute triangles also. Did this all sink in today? Did it seem like a lot to take in? If it did, pause the video, let it sink in, take a look back to page 223, and you can look at the top of 224 for a little bit of a review on those different angles and different lengths of the triangles. And if you need to rewatch the video, that's okay. Go back. If it starts to seem confusing, pause, think about it for a minute. Because to finish the lesson today, we're going to do another pair deck. Your pair deck today is going to look like this. Your teacher is going to share that code with you. And you are going to, for the first problem, you're going to look at the triangles below and fill in the chart. You're going to take that text tool, boys and girls, so that we can type really neatly. And we're going to type yes or no in each of these boxes. So as you look at triangle A, you're going to ask yourself, does it have an acute angles? If it does, you type yes. If it doesn't, you have to type no. Does it have right angles? Yes or no. Does it have obtuse angles? Yes or no. And does it have congruent sides, which means equal sides? Once you've done that for triangle A, you're going to circle. Now you can use that pen or marker tool. You can circle whichever words fit for this triangle. So is it an acute triangle, right triangle, or obtuse? Is it an equilateral, isosceles, or scalene triangle? Do the same thing for number 2, or I'm sorry, letter B. Number 2 and 3 are both, you are given what the triangle is. So number 2 is a right triangle that is also an isosceles triangle. Which one is that? Circle it. Number 3 is doing the same thing. This time it's a right triangle that's a scalene also. And then for number 4, you're going to draw an obtuse isosceles and an acute isosceles triangle. Make sure that you get into Pair Deck and you finish all 4 of those questions, boys and girls, and have a great rest of your Thursday.